Aloha, and good morning and welcome to Live at the Legislature, where every week we sit down with members of the House of Representatives to talk about issues, concerns, legislation, and gossip running through the halls of the state capitol. Joining us this morning are the chairpersons of two of our House committees, Representative Nicole Lowen, who represents District Number 6 on the Big Island, Kailua Kona, and Representative Takashi Ono. He represents District 27 on Oahu, and that's the Nu'uanu area. Nicole is the chair of the Energy and Environmental Protection Committee, and Takashi is the chair of the Intrastate Commerce Committee. Welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning. This year, the legislature is trying something a little bit new in its budgeting process. I say new in air quotes because actually it's been a process that has been on the books for quite a while. And I think the bottom line is that we're trying to take a look at the budget and make the agencies and the departments more accountable and transparent on how they are spending their money and where the money is being spent. So Representative Ono, you've been doing this for a while now. Can you expand on what it is we're doing right now?
Yes, well said. The legislature has a number of committees, and each committee has a subject matter. For example, my committee is the Intrastate Commerce Committee, and we look at things like professional licensing, insurance, cable TV, financial institutions. This year, the program IDs that comprise our state budget were assigned to each respective committee. So in that case, those jurisdictions that went, again, for financial institutions, cable TV, professional licensing, they came to my committee, and I had the chance to oversee those exact program IDs, which means I can take a look at their revenues, their expenditures, their cash balances. Each committee has had that same process.
So it sounds like there are a lot more eyes on the budget now, especially from the subject matter committee chairs like yours in environmental protection. How has the process impacted or affected how you're doing business this year?
It's taken on a lot more responsibility, I think, to have the chairs take on really diving into the budget of each of the program IDs under their jurisdiction. And even as a member of the Finance Committee for 6 years, you learn a lot, but the responsibility is not on your shoulders in the same way. So that has really encouraged the heads of the departments and divisions that are under those committees' jurisdictions to come and talk to the legislators and not just go straight to the finance chair. And it really expands, I think, the big picture that we're looking at. So it's not just about individual bills, but how they fit into the big picture of all the functions of these executive departments.
And is there has anything popped up that was sort of out of the ordinary or eye-opening or anything like that?
For my committee, one section that we're looking at a little bit closer this year is, for example, the State Energy Office. They had a not very favorable audit a couple years ago, a year and a half ago, and so yeah, it's been interesting looking and seeing what they are doing or what they aren't doing, and having the chance to think about how we can fix some of those issues and perhaps realign that office so that they have a mission in line with state policy.
Well, Representative Ono, your particular DCCA, which is where the bulk of where you oversee, a lot of it is self-funding, though. They've got a lot of fees, right? So it's not really well, it is taxpayer money, but it isn't like general funds or anything that department uses or gets.
That's right. The Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, or DCCA, is funded by user fees. Its licensees pay a fee. Oftentimes it's a franchise fee or perhaps a renewal license fee, and that money is collected and then used to regulate the respective industries. What I think happens is when we take a look at these numbers, we find that, in my belief, they've been overcharging their licensees. For year after year, the money that the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs takes in is greater than the money they spend.
Oh, really?
And the money that they spend, the money that they save each year because they take in more money, results in a cash balance. That cash balance has gone only one way, and that's up.
is there something you can do about it, or?
There is, yes.
And so what are you going to do about it?
I think it is really important as elected officials to be accountable to the public, and we hope to keep the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs accountable as well. We're trying to make sure that they have a healthy revenue and healthy expenditures that match, and a cash balance that'll last them somewhere between 9 months to a year, and that's their estimates. Through a couple of pieces of legislation that we've been able to craft because of this new legislative budgetary process, we try to put our ideas into these bills, and we're almost halfway through the session, and we'll see how it goes. But in the end, we hope that all the departments that we oversee are a little more accountable to the people we represent, to the things that we hear from our constituents surrounding cost of living, surrounding what it's like to live in Hawaii.
Well, that brings us to another point. Now, this is, as I say, this process has been on the books for quite a while now. And not everybody is a fan of what we are doing this year with the budget. There are some people who are critical, saying that at the end of the session, when everything sometimes goes a little crazy, there's a huge potential that whole programs could be dropped. What do you say? And other problems could come up with this new process. What do you say to that, Representative Lowen?
I think there's a balance, you know, when you're managing anything, I guess, between micromanaging and just giving free rein. And we're just seeking to find more of a balance in the middle of those two, because there are some divisions, I think, that have had free rein and no one's really looked closely at their expenditures and what they're doing. So I think that's positive. That said, it being the first year that we've done this, it's a new process for a lot of people. But I also have confidence that at the end of the day, we have a very experienced finance committee chairwoman, and that they're keeping an eye on the big picture. And we want a functioning government, and that's what we're striving to get to.
Representative Ona, what do you say to people who say this ain't going to work?
You know, I have two responses. The first one is simply that I've talked to a lot of people who probably think that government is too big and they wouldn't mind if it took a little cut to it. The second thing is that we dealt with big issues year after year, and it's the same process that we're going through now. We have bills, we have hearings, we take votes, and sometimes those bills don't make it to the end. And we come back the next year. One of the biggest bills that has happened when we were here was that rail bill, and that was the end of the world if this didn't happen bill, if we dropped the ball. We eventually got that solved. I think the same thing will happen here as well.
Well, let's, how, in the area of energy and environmental protection specifically, what legislation are you looking at this year?
You mean about within the budget process?
Within
or just
the budget
in
process
general?
and outside, either way.
Okay. I think a big focus of the committee is this year is starting to try to tackle a discussion about climate change, and that includes carbon emissions reduction, and also looking at things like sea level rise and what we would call adaptation. So, you know, I think like arguably that's kind of the biggest issue of our times, and it's one that can seem overwhelming in terms of trying to figure out how to tackle it. But I think that if we continue doing what we can, little by little, that we're taking steps in the right direction. And I think Hawaii is also really providing an example for many other states and around the world in dealing with climate. So, for example, some of the issues we have are just looking at some options for managed retreat and sea level rise adaptation, protecting critical infrastructure, looking at resilience, things like that.
Representative Ona, I wanted to ask you one other thing on the budget. Sorry to keep going back there, but how are the, now this is something brand new, and this is government, and change is tough sometimes for a monolithic battleship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. How has been the reaction from the departments and the people who you've been working with?
Oh, they certainly are very cooperative. Obviously, their budgets are very important to them, but it's a learning process. And I would be lying if I said it wasn't a learning process for both people, both sides, the department and us. When there's more transparency, when there's more questions, when there are more eyes on the budget, I think it benefits everyone. Again, we still have a long way in the legislative process, and I think that more and more people will start to catch on, and as we go through these next couple of weeks and months, people will start to weigh in, the public especially, the stakeholders who are, in my case, licensed by the DCCA. And I think taking all that, we'll make a decision in the end. I think it'll result in something better for the people of Hawaii and better for those licensees.
Well, this is, I think this is maybe the hallmark or probably another word for it, for this particular House of Representatives, where you've just, you've got 10 new freshman legislators. It's, I would say the makeup of this group and of the House in general has been, let's think out of the box kind of group of thinking. Would you agree? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, every year is an adventure.
I'm giving a plug for the House is basically what I'm doing here.
No, I think allowing chairs to tackle this and really not micromanaging how we're doing it has been, excuse me, a big change and a positive change.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us today and talking about this sort of inside baseball subject, but very interesting and very important. And thank you for joining us. Again, we will see you next week, where I promise maybe we'll talk about issues, concerns, and we'll throw in the gossip. Aloha. Thanks for joining us.